This fall, Americans will observe the 5th anniversary of 9/11. And to date, there are no memorials built to honor its 3,000 victims. But one Maryland man is hoping to change that by putting the pedal to the metal to fund 3 memorials to that tragic day. Even when Tom Heidenberger rides his bike on a beautiful spring day, thoughts of 9/11 are never far from his mind. That's when he lost his wife, Michelle, a stewardess on the flight that crashed into the Pentagon.
I wanted to bring them the recognition that they so much deserve. I mean, they were essentially the first of the first responders. That's our last really major hill here on the ride.
A retiring pilot, Tom devised the airline ride across America to remember the 33 crew members who died. Along the way, he enlisted 4 other pilots, including 2 retired Air Force veterans.
I've just got captivated by the cause, and of course being an airline crew member and being very close to that, especially my airline having lost 2 on September 11th, that was motivation enough.
What I want my children and what I want my children's children to remember years from now, not the names of the attackers or the organizations. I want them to remember the good people that helped give them the country and the life that we all get to enjoy.
We're riding today in memory of Chick Burlingame.
After more than 6 months of planning, the ride across America got underway on Dockweiler Beach near LAX. It was an emotional day.
For myself, for those of us that were airline employees who lost somebody, we couldn't have done this. We couldn't have survived the last 3 or 4 years if it wasn't for you all.
Minutes later, the biking began and the airline ride headed east towards 3 future memorial sites.
It's a happy story of how we've gone beyond that day, trying to make a difference, trying to do something positive.
And we'll update the airline ride over the next week on Around the Services. To learn more about it, go to airlineride.org. Tomorrow, our bikers pedal past Phoenix and hit a few bumps in the road. There are 5 guys trying to raise funds for the 9/11 memorials in honor of the airline employees that died that day. Tuesday, we followed the airline ride across America as it left Los Angeles. Today, as Air Force Sergeant Aaron Roberts reports, the crew recently ran into some bumps in the road outside Phoenix.
Behind you.
On this day, the bikers zip by the Arizona landscape.
Here we are over 500 miles into the journey, and everybody's still intact.
But earlier in the week, the bikers climbed 90 miles of continuous uphill grade into headwinds. Remembering the friends and loved ones they lost gives the group its momentum.
Really important story to tell, and this was the right way to do it.
As soon as I heard about it, I knew that this was something I had to be a part of, and I'm really proud to be here and be part of this whole group.
Wherever the journey takes them, the RV support team follows closely. It supplies the bikers with water, food, clothing, and occasional shelter. This band of bikers with backup has definitely bonded.
So here we are, the family, so to speak, of the airline ride across America.
Back on the open road between Phoenix and Tucson, despite all their prior planning, the trek took an unexpected turn, a close encounter of the state trooper kind.
And his first words were, "Where's your permit?"
Need to have you guys go as far to your ride as possible.
I mean, it was rather comical. And then after some discussion, it was all resolved. I mean, he was primarily interested in our safety, making sure that we obeyed the laws and the rules.
Fighting off leg cramps, the bikers were soon back in their gel seats, headed toward Fort Hood.
Bye guys, we're leaving you. Be careful.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Air Force Sergeant Aaron Roberts, Pentagon Channel News.
And special thanks to the crews at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base and 29 Palms for their coverage of the airline bike ride. Welcome back, everyone. All week long, we've been following the airline ride across America. 5 bikers remembering their fellow airline colleagues, friends, and family, and raising funds for the 9/11 memorials. Air Force Sergeant Aaron Roberts brings us the highlights of their trip to Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas.
Along the way, the bikers have been buoyed by local support, but their warm reception at Fort Bliss proved very memorable.
It was very, very emotional, very, very tearful to see our men and women in uniform who are now our defenders greet us.
You sense their enthusiasm for something that in many cases a lot of them they were probably still in high school when 9/11 happened, but yet they're serving proudly with our armed forces, and it's uplifting.
Curious soldiers got a glimpse into the daily routine of what it takes to bike 3,700 miles in 33 days. Tom Heidenberger shared some of the details of the itinerary.
Basically 6 o'clock launch, get up and go, and like coming into here, we did about an average speed of almost 20 miles an hour for Las Cruces.
For this short leg into Fort Bliss, the original 5 were joined by other cyclists who supported the cause. Heidenberger addressed the crowd with his thoughts.
Our boys are now in harm's way overseas in Afghanistan and in Iraq. You guys are taking care of us now, and for that, I'm forever grateful, and there are not enough words for me to say thank you. Thank you very much.
After a little bike tweaking, the ride got back on the road again. 50 miles behind them, 100 more lay ahead before the bikes could be hung up for the day. Air Force Sergeant Aaron Roberts, Pentagon Channel News.
And the Pentagon Channel would like to thank the Public Affairs Office at Fort Bliss for their coverage of the airline ride in El Paso. On the next edition of Around the Services, we catch up with the bike ride thousands of miles later in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And changing gears now, thousands of miles, a couple of bike crashes, and a roadside rendezvous with an Arizona state trooper. The airline ride across America cycled out of Los Angeles to raise funds for the 9/11 memorials and to remember the airline employees that died that day. The ride has traveled 9 states to arrive just outside Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Air Force Sergeant Dave Scott checks in on the bikers on a much-needed day off.
Even the support RV shows the wear and tear of 3,100 miles in 23 days. So today is a time to clean up and reflect on the journey so far.
It's been for us a emotional roller coaster, just like the hills of West Virginia and Pennsylvania. We have ups and we have downs, but it's been very, very rewarding. The support we've received throughout the country has been phenomenal.
Donna Koshin took leave from her job as a stewardess to join the ride. Usually she's inside the van charged with the care and feeding of the bikers.
Flight attendant skills. They come in handy with first aid, food and beverage, you name it.
From her perch behind the bikers on the road, Koshin shares the bittersweet experience of the physical ride and the psychic journey.
It definitely peels the scab off of the wound, but at the same point in time, this ride has been so healing for all of us in so many different ways. And we finally feel that we can do something to memorialize and give back.
To keep the whole thing as economical as possible, as well as working properly, you have to do a lot of preventative maintenance.
Air Force veteran and pilot Paul Gutenberg prefers to be on the bike, but he also acts as the airline ride's official Mr. Fix-It. He reflects on the reasons he signed up for the ride in the first place.
I had some good friends I lost on September 11th. And that was a big deal. Years from now, people need to remember that we still enjoy what we do because there are always people willing to give. And here's where you watch when you do that. So
as the bikers get ready for the road ahead, they also mentally prepare for visiting all 3 memorial sites over the next week and a half. In many ways, their hardest days lay ahead. Air Force Sergeant Dave Scott, Pentagon Channel News.
And you can check on the riders' progress at airlineride.org, where you'll find their daily blog. Next week on Around the Services, we'll follow the bikers' uphill climb to the crash site of Flight 93. And now to a bike of a different kind. Last week, we began coverage of the airline ride across America, a group of cyclists remembering the airline employees who lost their lives on 9/11 and raising money for 3 memorials. Today, 3,100 miles from where they started may be one of their hardest. Sergeant Dave McLean is there as they physically and mentally prepare to visit the first crash site in Shanksville, Pennsylvania.
Where's your water bottle? Or are they on your bikes?
The bike day starts with the usual rituals, getting ready for the day's ride. Sherry Burlingame attaches the flags to the support RV, just like she has for the last 23 days.
Just to show the families and the community that we are united together, and we're there for them and to help in any way that we can.
Sherry lost her husband, pilot Chick Burlingame, at the Pentagon. She finds her work here rewarding.
Anytime that we can help, it's good for my heart.
Even as they go about their routine, the bikers steel themselves for the ride ahead.
It is hard, but to me, that's what makes it mean something. The fact that it's physically and emotionally demanding, it makes it mean something, and that's what makes it special to me.
Emotionally, it's going to be difficult. You can't help but remember who we're riding for or what we're riding about.
Today, lots of other bikers joined the ride to show support for the cause.
Please, let's all stay together. We've got plenty of time to get to Shanksville.
Soon, the ride takes off, heading uphill to the courthouse in Somerset to meet up with families who lost loved ones in the Shanksville crash.
My name's Gordon Felt. My brother Edward was a passenger on United 93.
Sherry Burlingame, my husband was the captain on Flight 77.
At Shanksville, the wind whistles across the wide-open landscape as the entourage climbs the final hill to the temporary memorial. Soon, a ceremony gathers around a wreath of remembrance for a moment of silence. Lead rider Tom Heidenberger, who lost his wife Michelle in the Pentagon crash, feels the pain of the day's events.
I didn't think it'd impact me as much as it did. You see the memorial there, you see all of this here, you get a sense of life, the loss of a human being, a loss of an innocent. It got to me.
It's very moving to come here and see, the place where that fight against evil and terrorism really began in this country.
We have to go onward. Michelle would want me to go on. 3,000 other victims would want us to go on, but to go on in a positive sense, to have something good come out of it.
Staff Sergeant Dave McLean, Pentagon Channel News.
The ride's hope to raise funds for 3 permanent memorials is gathering momentum. So far, they've raised nearly $100,000. The airline ride across America is now headed for the Pentagon, following a visit to the World Trade Center memorial site last week. As Air Force Sergeant Dave Scott reports, for some of the riders, it was an emotional stop as they paid a visit to a memorial garden in honor of 9/11.
This day, the bike ride crosses paths with history, repeating a famous Revolutionary War milestone, Washington's crossing of the Delaware. Except for 2 days of rain, nearly every day has provided cloudless skies.
We start out with the blue sky. It's almost as if it was like 4.5 years ago. Cool, crisp, it reminds you of that day.
Here in Yardley, Pennsylvania, the riders get an enthusiastic reception.
It was amazing as they all came in up the avenue today. It was very heartfelt. It was very emotional for me.
In this spot, the residents of Bucks County are building a garden of remembrance for their 17 loved ones who perished at the World Trade Center.
Exactly. And you don't have to say anything. You don't have to do anything. There is a friendship, a bond.
We're all one family now.
Meeting with 9/11 families begins an instant dialogue of shared memories and pain. Tara Bain lost her husband, Michael.
Things like this are very important to help people remember, and remember in a way that it's not just a group of people who died that day. It's these individuals and who are very important to people that are here. It's all of our loved ones.
Ellen Saracini lost her husband, pilot Victor Saracini.
What the guys have done is tremendous. It's a lot easier to write a check for a donation to anything, but to get on your bicycles and ride across the United States takes tremendous willpower and effort and commitment. We have remembrances for reasons,
But you need to give yourself a big hug, pat on the back.
Well, as soon as you take a shower, I'm going to give you a big hug and a pat on the back.
Later in the day, Ellen Sarkini's backyard barbecue caps a Memorial Day.
And we're really not here to mourn. We're here to celebrate those lives, and then in the process, we hope we can raise funds that we can dedicate in their names when this is all over to the 3 memorials.
Air Force Sergeant Dave Scott, Pentagon Channel News.
On the next edition of Around the Services, it's the last stop for the airline ride across America, the emotional finale at the Pentagon.
33 days and 3,700 miles behind them, the airline ride across America pedaled to a close Tuesday at the Pentagon crash site. Air Force Sergeant Dave Scott chronicles the exuberance and emotion at a long journey's end.
Their flag held high, the bikers were met with supportive cheers for their monumental tribute to the memory of the crew members who lost their lives on September 11th. Among those in the crowd, many airline colleagues who shared their loss.
Over there. Rob, I'm proud to ride with you.
Thank you very much.
Homecoming hugs were the order of the day.
You guys look in good shape, too. We are.
And a lot of picture taking, and there was the now traditional wreath laying at the final 9/11 memorial site.
For us especially, the frontline people and the airlines that are on the front lines today, just as the troops are, need to have a place to come to remember that standard of courageousness set by our fellows in the air.
What can I say other than what a glorious day?
Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld congratulated the riders on their efforts.
Thank you for calling attention to September 11th, to the memorials in New York, at Shanksville, and here at the Pentagon. We appreciate that a great deal. So thank you for being here. Thank you for doing what you do. We're very much in your debt. Thank you.
What a wonderful wrap up here. It was a real treat to have Secretary Rumsfeld come down here. We weren't expecting that, so that was wonderful.
Deputy Secretary of Defense Gordon England added his words of praise.
The riders here today have chosen a remarkable way to pay respects, riding bicycles thousands of miles all the way across the nation. Their extraordinary stamina, hard work, and personal determination are fitting tributes to the courageous men and women, including your own family members, they set out to honor. And Tom, congratulations to you.
Thank you very much.
You and all your riders, absolutely spectacular.
Thank you very much.
Today was uplifting, seeing the outpour of the crew members and family members that were here today. It's very good. Makes it all worthwhile.
The ride portion of the job is done, but the rest of it, insofar as the awareness to the memorials and keeping the memory alive, will continue. As I stand before you all, not just airline employees, not just men and women in uniform, but in front of all of you, this is a very, very humbling experience. Thank you.
Air Force Sergeant Dave Scott, Pentagon Channel News.
And one last note, the riders so far have raised nearly $70,000 for the 3 9/11 memorial sites. You can follow their story from start to finish at www.airlineride.org. That's it for this edition of Around the Services. From everyone at the Pentagon Channel, thanks for joining us.